Dear Asian people, please stop being so racist and anti-black all the time. When we seek white acceptance, we're being anti-black.
As an Asian American, I know that a lot of my privilege comes from our proximity to whiteness, and with that privilege comes a certain level of protection that is not the case for everybody, particularly Black and brown folks.
The Asian community is literally so anti-black, and it literally fucking pisses me off. Like, we are literally so uneducated, uninformed, just misinformed, everything about the Black community, and it pisses me off. And like, it just boggles my mind how a lot of Asians see Black people as beneath them.
Somebody needs to explain to me why do they think they're white?
Okay, I wish I could stitch that video, but basically that person is asking, this person wants to know why so many Korean Americans try so hard to be white. Or in other words, why do so many Korean Americans try so desperately hard to be accepted by white people, and why do we think that we will benefit from white supremacy? And the answer is US imperialism.
The Asian Americans are now learning what the Black people in the United States have known and have been teaching for generations, that proximity to whiteness doesn't equal safety, and anti-blackness harm all of us. White supremacy does not protect anyone. And let us be clear, guys, this anti-blackness and colorism things, it exists in a lot of communities, not only in the Latin communities, not only in the Asian communities, not only in the Arab communities, even in some of the African countries, this colorism thing exists. And so let us not just talk about the anti-blackness, let us also include the colorism in this topic. So guys, welcome back to Afrojudy's channel. I really appreciate your massive love and support. So let me know what you think about this topic before we dive in. Kindly give the video a thumbs up and subscribe if you're coming across Afrojudy's channel for the first time. And a big shout out to all my members, to all my subscribers, and to anyone watching this video.
When you become pro-Asian enough, you start listening to Black people and become pro-Black as well. I'm not talking about individual Asian advancement where you play pick-me to white people, cater to them, make yourself smaller for them, maybe marry one of them, and then move up in society that way. No, that's not what I'm talking about. When you're interested in the liberation of the Asian American collective and in Asians around the world freeing themselves, and specifically to Asian Americans because we are a relatively new ethnic group in America, you realize that Black Americans have been liberating themselves for as long as they have been here, for over 400 years. You look at the way that they ostracize the pick-me's in their community, the Candace Owens, you can see what happened with Onyeka, the Danish deception girl. Black people, and specifically Black women, did not let them off the hook. Candace Owens can no longer go to Black people for any kind of support or help because as a collective, they have disowned her. Why are Asians not doing more of that? Look at the way that Black people have created their own spaces, created their own communities throughout American history. Even when white people have gone and tried to destroy them, they have managed to create their own culture, their own language. They're protective of those spaces. They embrace their ethnic features and hair texture instead of just doing whatever Karen is doing. And this, I'm talking generally. I'm not saying that every Black American is like this. I'm saying that a lot of them are, and that the general sentiment that I get from that community is that they are proud to be who they are. So if you're Asian and you're thinking, I want to be able to wear my qipao to school, I don't like it when people gentrify my food after making fun of it my entire childhood. I don't like being fetishized, and I will not marry someone who does that to me. When you start thinking this way, you just look right on over to Black people, and they've already had those thoughts. They've already done the same thing. You just do it in your own Asian flavor. And this doesn't even get into the fact that our liberation is all tangled up in each other. Like, all the minorities in the US and in the world, overthrowing white supremacy is like a collective effort. And Black people have been telling us this since we got here. I'm just hoping that if I say it, then maybe you will listen.
Dear Asian people, please stop being so racist and anti-black all the time. When we seek white acceptance, we're being anti-black. You know what Black people are saying about the whole H-mark controversy? They're sitting this one out. They're eating popcorn and watching us because they're tired of helping us. Black people have been saying this shit for years. Everyone, including Asian people, have been appropriating Black culture far longer and more insidiously than any other group. How are we going to expect Black people to be in solidarity with us when we're still so anti-Black and crave proximity to whiteness? Asians are where we are today because Black and Indigenous people fought for our civil rights, yet y'all still want to sit at the white people's table. Asians are still doing shit like feeding into the model minority myth, and a lot of y'all are still obsessed with chasing after wealth or prestige using the same systems that have exploited Black people for generations. And just because you went to a good school, landed a corporate job, or assimilated into white culture doesn't mean you can become politically apathetic and throw under the bus all the black activists and organizers who have fought tirelessly so you can enjoy the rights that you have today. Asians, please stop being so complicit in white supremacy. It's embarrassing. If we want to advance Asian American rights, we have to fight against white supremacy alongside black and brown people.
As an Asian American, I know that a lot of my privilege comes from our proximity to whiteness. And with that privilege comes a certain level of protection that is not the case for everybody, particularly black and brown folks. And so I was talking about this situation where this white woman confused me for another Asian person that she had just seen, even though we looked nothing alike. And I didn't say anything in the moment because I have just become accustomed to not really calling those things out and not wanting to make people uncomfortable. And in doing that, I was not only suppressing my own voice, but I also wasn't using the privilege and the protection that I have. There was never any danger, physical or otherwise, that I was in. And I certainly wouldn't have been in any danger, even if I had called it out. She would have just been uncomfortable probably and maybe thought twice about doing that in the future. But that's not the case for everybody in every situation, especially for black and brown folks who call out the very real racism that they see every day. There are a lot of problems with anti-blackness in the Asian community, and so as I am trying to, consciously relearn the way that I should handle these kinds of interactions, I'm glad that a lot of folks are rightfully calling out that it is incumbent upon me and other Asian Americans who have this proximity to whiteness and this privilege to speak out when we ourselves are not in danger in a way that other folks might be.
Please be patient with me because there's so much here. I think the quick answer is that Asian Americans are given white privilege, especially the Asian Americans who fit the model minority stereotype. The quid pro quo for receiving that privilege is upholding white supremacy culture, which means being anti-black. I was talking with somebody last night who was pointing out that the Civil Rights Amendment was passed in 1964, but also in the 1960s, the United States opened the door to Asian immigration. So now you have an influx of racial minorities who knew nothing about the history of white violence against Black people, knew nothing about the Black civil rights movement. So they arrived with civil rights, not understanding how that came to be. And also it effectively erased the United States' own anti-Asian history, because Asian Americans came in not necessarily knowing about the Chinese Exclusion Act or the internment of Japanese Americans in the United States during World War II. And I think that Asian Americans are used as a buffer between the Black community and the white community, because in the 1960s, there was almost a racial reckoning. The white power structure almost had to face accountability for the history of violence against Black people. But instead, Asian Americans were inserted and were pit against each other, so that we're always up against each other, and that basically white supremacy escapes accountability. And the example that I think of that sort of started the root of a lot of tension is Asian Americans were buying into the negative media stereotypes of Black people. And then in the events that led up to what became known as the LA riots, the LAPD kettled protests away from wealthy white neighborhoods and into Koreatown, and then they left. And we know how that played out. So again, the two communities being pitted against each other and away from the white power structure. And obviously the model minority myth is used to oppress the Black community. And there's so much here. I will be getting more into it, but I feel like that's the quickest answer that I can give that gets a little bit into the history. And I'm really curious to know what the Black community and Asian Americans feel about this. But please be patient with me.
Thank you.
I've seen a few comments like this with, Asians and Black people fighting in my comment section. And honestly, it shows how little we actually talk about the history behind all of this. The tension didn't just magically appear, it was shaped by decades of laws, segregation, stereotypes, and political narratives that pushed our communities apart. When Asian immigrants first came to the US, they weren't allowed to live just anywhere. Segregation forced them into Black and brown neighborhoods because those were the only areas open to anyone who wasn't white. So Asians and Black Americans were physically close, but not always connected. Different languages, different histories, limited communication, misunderstandings grew out of that. Then in the 1960s, during the Civil Rights Movement, the US created the model minority myth. The idea that Asian Americans were successful, quiet, and proof that racism doesn't exist. That stereotype was never meant to lift Asians up. It was meant to contrast Asians against Black Americans and basically say, see, like they're doing fine, why can't you? It was a political tool that built resentment and pressure on both sides, even though neither community created that narrative. At the same time, anti-Blackness already existed in some Asian cultures because of colonialism, colorism, and Western media influence. And for some Black Americans, their only interactions with Asians were through local businesses, corner stores, nail salons, restaurants, situations that were transactional, not relational. That created frustration and stereotypes on both sides. But here's the thing. In both communities, it's only a small handful of people who are actually hateful or racist. A few loud, ignorant individuals do not represent millions of us. We can't let the worst examples define entire communities. Then COVID hit and all of this got amplified again. Anti-Asian hate skyrocketed. Elderly Asians were attacked, harassed, and blamed for the virus, all because of fear and political scapegoating. Some of the viral videos showed attackers who were Black, and suddenly that tiny number of incidents turned into a whole narrative online like Black people hate Asians, which was inaccurate and unfair. What people forget is that Black activists and Black organizations publicly stood with Asian communities during that time. People protested for us. They protected Asian elders. They spoke out against the hate. But the media rarely highlighted the solidarity, only the violence. And yes, some Asians responded by generalizing those incidents and blaming the entire Black community, which made things even worse, even though the majority of Black people had nothing to do with those attacks. COVID didn't create new racism. It exposed what was already unaddressed and made stereotypes louder because everyone was scared and hurting. But amid all of that, we forget that historically there has also been real solidarity. Asian American activists learned organizing strategies from Black civil rights leaders. Filipino and Black farm workers united under Larry Itliong and Cesar Chavez. Japanese American activists stood with the Black Panthers. Yuri Kochiyama worked alongside Malcolm X. In Oakland, Black and Asian communities built programs together to fight poverty and injustice. These are real alliances. They just don't get talked about as much as the conflicts. That's why we need to zoom out. Like, a handful of ignorant people shouldn't define entire communities. A bad experience shouldn't turn into a stereotype. We shouldn't let old narratives and old wounds be recycled and divide us again. Asians and Black people have both faced discrimination, exclusion, violence, and being treated like outsiders. We have more in common than we think, and when we work together, there's real power, real healing, and real progress. We just have to stop letting fear, stereotypes, and misinformation talk louder than the history and solidarity we actually come from.
Honestly, yeah. And it's really unfortunate and really embarrassing and shameful that Asians do crave that proximity to whiteness so badly that we're willing to not be in solidarity with other BIPOC or Black, queer, brown folk. Like, it's... we can always boil things down to like childhood and upbringing, but I like to always say, like, this is what I kind of learned in therapy. Like, once you're an adult and you realize you have free will and you realize you have the agency to unlearn, relearn, like unpack and discover life, that you start to realize how fucked up it is that we want that and we crave that proximity to whiteness. Like, I will say that is oftentimes with a lot of Asian Americans that I meet, East Asian Americans specifically where I'm speaking from, but like in my experience, I questioned this at such a young age, and I think that's because I didn't grow up in I grew up in a predominantly white space, but then when my parents got divorced, we ended up moving to like a lower income area, and I went to school with primarily Black and brown and like Hispanic folk, and everything changed when I was around other people of color, honestly. Like, when I was just around white people, I did want to, like, look white, feel white, act white. And, like, you know, everyone back then, I remember Twinkie was a thing. And then when I moved to, like, the different neighborhoods, and also then I moved to LA, because I'm from DC, and then I, like, moved my life over here, and I have not gone back to the East Coast. I'm never going to live on the East Coast again, unless it's, like, New York or, like, possibly Miami, but I want my Spanish to get better first. But it's our responsibility as a community to be better and to do better. And I oftentimes find it so disheartening and so disappointing in my own community. Like, let's just recap this year alone. Like, Kevin and his goddamn blackface, the purple YSL blush situation, and all these Asian creators felt like they had so much fucking right to say it's a brightener. But no, it's a fucking blush. Yes, you can use it as a brightener, but that's not how it was marketed, and they missed the whole fucking point with what other black creators were saying. The Euphoria Foundation, oh my god, I just spit. The fucking UTI podcast, Esther, like, and I honestly think this is like a kind of like a direct contrast in Asian Americans, like, their stereotype growing up. I remember everyone always thought that I was supposed to be so smart because I was Asian, and I was just born with these genes for math, but I'm fucking dyslexic and I have ADHD and other neurodiversities that I don't really care to qualify on here, or like to surmise on here. But like, I think the contrast of us being this stereotype of like smart, academic, overachievers has now, we've like slid into like the opposite end of like boba, raving, ABG culture, and like, and even then ABG culture, like, they don't, like, a lot of people who reference themselves as ABGs, or like people who say they want an ABG baddie, they don't even know where that like term comes from originally, and it has like a dark not a dark history, but it had kind of but yeah, I don't know. Whenever I read comments like this, it makes me so freaking sad, because like, for me, I don't identify with this craving of whiteness. I live in the Bay Area, and it's like a predominantly Asian place, and white place. But I remember 10 years ago, this was like a much more diverse community. But I adamantly stay away from the marina. I don't go to North Beach. I stay in the Mission. I stay in the Castro. I stay in San Jose and Oakland. Like, I'd rather die than be pregnant, and I also rather die than go to the marina. Like, I don't know what else to say with that, but yeah. I just want the community to be better. And we're so stuck in our own politics, because all of us, the only thing we care about is fucking representation for some reason, as like the pinnacle hallmark of anti-racism against Asians in this country. But I digress. Asian Americans need to do better. That's why I started my decentering whiteness thing in the first place. But now everyone's just commenting Oxford study, Piccolo study, fucking mail truck study. I don't know, there are mail trucks in front of me, but it's really hard to like be Asian and exist to do the work to unpack, because people still are going to accuse us of siding with the whites or siding with whiteness. I don't know where I was going with this video. This ended up turning into a rant. If you made it this far, I don't know what to tell you. Go watch Arcane.
Somebody needs to explain to me why do they think they're white?
Okay, I wish I could stitch that video, but basically that person is asking, that this person wants to know why so many Korean Americans try so hard to be white. Or in other words, why do so many Korean Americans try so desperately hard to be accepted by white people, and why do we think that we will benefit from white supremacy? And the answer is US imperialism. It's always US imperialism. Particularly migration pathways that were carved out by military occupation. So let me explain. When I was really young, my mom used to always tell me, oh, if you go to Korea, if you live in Korea, people there are gonna hate you. And I remember that confusing me so much as a kid, because why? Why would they hate me without knowing me? And so I tried to, press her for an answer, and she would just say, oh, it's for no reason. They're just jealous that you get to live in the US. Flash forward, when I'm in school or college, and I'm taking Asian American studies classes in critical race studies, and I'm like, Oh, I get it now. A lot of us already know the US is not this benevolent country that takes care of its citizens, let alone immigrants, indigenous people, even its own veterans. And abroad, the US terrorizes the global south through military occupation and other means, which includes Korea. You don't ever hear about or see people in Korea, Korean people in Korea, protesting US occupation, but it's there. And there's still this dream or hope of both Koreas one day reuniting or being reunified. Very generally speaking, more recent Korean immigration into the US, or maybe I should say from the 1970s onwards, these are people who have the means to. They have the money, the capital, the resources, the social connections, and maybe even more importantly, they want to. They want to come and live here. So are the people who resent the US for imposing themselves into the homeland, dividing the nation into two, and in the process separating families forever, are they going to want to uproot their lives to live in the country responsible for that pain and suffering and ultimately this loss of self-determination? Or are the people who sympathize with the US and view the country as this welcoming, benevolent nation, as the saviors almost for coming into the war, are they going to be the ones to want to move and live here? The people that immigrated are probably people who sympathized with US involvement in the war and who also subscribed to the idea of the American dream. And generally speaking, tended to be of the ruling class. And they get here, they either become disillusioned by it, the American dream, and start to question the ideas they've been told, or they hang on to it even tighter and blame other groups of people, other groups of marginalized people, for not being able to self-actualize this dream. This is just coming from my experience, observations, things that I've learned as a Korean American who has family members on both ends of the political spectrum. But, and again, I'm simplifying things a lot, but I also think that this general idea or explanation could also be applied to other East Asian and Southeast Asian communities. And if this topic interests you at all in the slightest, I highly, highly, highly recommend reading Haunting the Korean Diaspora by Grace Cho. It's a small book, but kind of heavy because it gets into some really dark stuff. But yeah, that's my answer.
The Black Americans have always been teaching people, have always been teaching the world that the proximity to whiteness doesn't help at all, and also that the anti-blackness will one day harm all of us, even those who are trying to align themselves to the whiteness. Because let me say, for example, some of the Latinos and some of the Asians, they have always tried this, and also they have always tried to distance themselves from the white suffering so that they can be seen as a true ally to the white people. And when it comes to some of the issues, to some of the struggles that they need the black people's help, that is when they start considering the black people as important and they start seeking for their help. And right now, majority of these Asian Americans, they are learning and understanding whatever the black people have been telling the world and have been teaching the world for all these years. And at least they have known that in their community, there are some people who align to whiteness so bad. There are some of them who are anti-black and they don't want to see black people succeeding. They always see black people as a threat. And as if that's not enough, there is also colorism that exists within the black people. And majorly, it happened in some of the African countries, and also some of the immigrants in some of these Western countries always practice this colorism, and it is no good because they also want to align to the whiteness and they want to forget the struggles that the black people have been enduring for all these years. Like you, for instance, you'll find a black woman or a black man trying to bleach his skin or her skin so that he or she can be look like them folks. But at the end of the day, they'll still be treated the same way the black people are being treated, even if it's an Asian, even if it's an Arab or a Latino, they will be treated the same way the black people will be treated because they are not like them, however they try so hard to be like them. When it comes to work, that is how they always discriminate the black people. When it comes to certain activities or even in schools, that is how some of these Asians always try to discriminate the black people, but not all of them. At least majority of them are now waking up, realizing that if they continue aligning themselves to the whiteness, if they continue to be anti-blackness, this thing will not help them, because they will also still be profiled the same way the black people are being profiled. They'll also be denied some opportunities the way some of the black people are being denied the opportunities. And that's why you find out that some of them have started seeking for solidarity, because yes, I know historically there was a time when the Asian communities and the black communities were in solidarity together, especially during the late 60s and 70s, when the Black Panthers and the Asians were in solidarity together. I don't know how people always forget some of the things so easily, and they start aligning to the whiteness, or maybe they want to consider themselves to be so clean, to be so pure as compared to any other people. And at the end of the day, they will be the sellouts. They will be revealing some of the secrets that are there within the community to these people, and that is what they will be using against us people. So guys, let me know what you think about this, because I have watched several videos of the Asian Americans calling out their own people, especially those who want to be like the white people, especially those who are so anti-black, and they want to profile black people, they want to mistreat the black people the way they want. Colorism is a cousin of anti-blackness, and both of them are the legacy of colonialism and white supremacy, and it has affected majority of the people, not only the Asian communities. It has affected the Africans, the Caribbeans, the Latinos, the Black Americans. Like, it's something which is across the globe. They always consider, when it comes to colorism, they always consider a lighter skin to be prettier than a darker skin. And it has affected majority of the ladies when it comes to dating, when it comes to work. You'll find that they hire a lighter skin, and they ignore a darker skin. When it comes to dating preferences, you'll find that some of the men prefer a lighter skin ladies and consider darker skin ladies to be ugly. And majority of the Asians, especially, you'll find that the Black Indians, that is a way they're experiencing this anti-blackness within their own communities. The Afro Latinos, they are experiencing the same thing, and that's what some of the Asians are doing to the black people. That's why you find that majority of them right now are calling out their own to stop doing whatever they are doing, because at the end of the day, it will not help them. Whether you try to align to the to proximity to whiteness, it will still not help you, because racism doesn't consider whether you are an Asian, you are an African, you are a Caribbean, you are a Black American, you are a Latino. They still racially profile you. White supremacy doesn't consider where you are coming from. Still, you will face the repercussions. So guys, let me know what you think about this in the comment section below. Thank you so much guys for watching this video. I honestly appreciate your massive love and support each and every single day. Let us learn and also relearn from each other, and also let us have in mind that colorism and anti-blackness will not help us. It will continue harming us and dividing us. Until next time guys, let's meet on my next episode. Peace and love.